I watched a video by Aaron Clary today, and it's not exactly the topic of the video, but there was a part where he was addressing the issue of Karens. A Karen is that post-wall woman who, regardless of whether she's had children or not, or been married or not, is usually a married woman who has had children and has a doormat husband who lets her do whatever she wants. But in some cases, a Karen just needs to be post-wall. She might, in one of these cases, not have children, not have a husband, but she has, I don't know, maybe a public office that keeps a cushy life for her, or she has a father who keeps acting like her eternal doormat. And so the consequence is that a Karen is a person who is eternally inconvenient. But anyway, yeah, in this part of the video, Aaron Clary talked about the oppression Olympics among communists, among progressives, right? Among the left-wing crowd, which is that whole thing where you have like a scale of oppression. Yeah, like for example, on the oppression scale, someone who isn't heterosexual is more oppressed than someone who is heterosexual. So for them, someone who isn't heterosexual has to be prioritized. And in the same way, for example, a black woman is more oppressed than a white woman, so she has to be prioritized? So, in the same way that, for example, in progressive circles, they even went as far as expelling gay men, right? Then afterwards, what was left, that would be considered privileged. What would be considered privileged would be straight women, right? Especially white straight women. So, like, as they keep removing people from the group, removing them from the movement, so to speak, those they consider privileged because only the oppressed should have a turn, should have a voice. It's as if it's now the turn of white straight women in the progressive environment to start getting heat, to be kind of expelled from the movement. And so in this case, for example, the Karens come in because the general Karen meme is that annoying post-wall white woman. But anyway, the part that made me record this audio is a moment where he says, for example, that the white woman, yeah, over in the United States, right? He was talking about, it's not even a question of her, yeah, being able to suffer some abuse at the hands of some man or some man she's in a relationship with or anything like that. It's kind of the issue like with the Karen. It's not even a question of her suffering some abuse, some violence. She can't be inconvenienced. Her being inconvenienced is already like a form of abuse, a form of violence. Anyway, why did I record? Am I recording this audio? Because it's like a scale, right? I'm going to make this comparison like, oh no, yeah, for these women, not just the Karens, the white ones, the black ones, the straight ones, the gay ones, and so on, for all of them in general. It's not even a question of like, oh, she's being oppressed because she's actually being abused, actually suffering violence. For them, yeah, being bothered, feeling uncomfortable in any way is a form of abuse. It's a form of violence. And let's see, what can you compare this to? Just take, for example, and compare it with the definition of rape. What has happened to it in the last 30, 40 years, right? If you take what rape originally is, rape is a guy taking a woman by force, right? Immobilizing her with or without a weapon, or just with his own hands, and penetrating her by force, right? As they went on expanding the definition of rape, the definition of rape started to be, oh, the woman thought the guy was wearing a condom and the guy wasn't wearing a condom. Oh, the guy was wearing a condom, but the condom broke and he kept penetrating? Or, oh, for example, yeah, the woman regretted it. Right, that's the most basic part of Me Too, and yes means yes. The woman regretted having sex with the guy. Oh, she was seeing him and thinking they were going to date or thinking they were going to date and get married, but he just wanted some fun. And then he broke up with her. And then later she accused him of rape? And again, that whole thing, the accusation can be made weeks, months, years later. So we see that something that originally really was violence, was abuse, has expanded to a scale to the point of, no, it's an inconvenience? The guy disappointed her. Yeah, the guy was inconvenient to her, bothered her. That's violence. That's abuse. Why am I saying this? Because now in 2020, they added the definition of psychological violence to the Maria da Penha law here in Brazil, right? And if you want to summarize it, psychological violence is basically anything that causes, what's the term? Emotional discomfort in a woman, right? Anything that makes her stressed, makes her paranoid. So what is that? It's no longer just that issue of actual violence and abuse, of physical force, right? Or of locking someone in a place and forbidding them from doing something. No, it's simply inconvenience, feeling bothered. That right there is already a form of violence. It's already a form of abuse. So you see how things connect, right? Not that part of the meme. It was just an introduction. Because I think it's interesting for people to know what the deal is with the Karen meme. But it's also important to know about the oppression Olympics within progressive circles, within feminist circles. Because if you know what that hierarchy is like, you know who the next person in that group is going to be to get hammered, right? Because, for example, the first ones to get hammered who were considered less oppressed there were the gays, the gay men, right? Then, after that, the ones who came to get hammered were the straight women, the white straight women. So much so that these white straight women, they became the TERFs, right? Those more radical feminists who start saying that no, only biological women are women. And they also picked a fight with trans women. And then we came along, we saw this diabolical union between the trad cons, right? The conservative traditionalists, a bunch of cucks, with the feminists, right? Generally those who are on the oppression scale, the white straight ones, who want to defend what? They want to defend their position of privilege, you know? The position of a privileged woman. And this part about the straight white woman is totally Karen. But anyway, what needed to be addressed is this issue that for them to say it doesn't matter if it's about the definition of rape, the definition of domestic violence. In general, all women, what they've done in recent years and recent decades was it's the oppression Olympics. It's simply the oppression Olympics. It doesn't matter if they have a longer life expectancy than men. It doesn't matter if in developed countries you have more women graduating from higher education than men. Yeah, it doesn't matter if the state charges women much less in taxes and directs many more benefits to them. They always have to have something to complain about. They have to have some way of asserting that they are oppressed, you know? And for that, it's necessary to keep creating this totally schizophrenic thing of expanding all forms of violence, of abuse, you know, whether it's domestic, whether it's sexual. And then it reaches that level of clown world, that current Hong Kong level, where you clearly see that it's not real abuse. It's not real oppression. It's not real violence. For the modern woman, simply feeling uncomfortable with something is already violence. It's already abuse. It's at an extreme level. I don't know, it's a pet, a luxury pet. It's as if the woman were a pet, a luxury pet. It's as if she were a shade flower, right? An orchid. The little princess, the little treasure, cannot go through any inconvenience, any uncomfortable situation in life. Basically, no one has the right to disappoint her. Yeah, no one has the right not to satisfy her demands. And if they do that, it's a form of abuse. It's a form of violence. It's a form of rape. So much so that before I started celibacy, right, in 2018, when I made that video talking about, what was the term again? I won't remember the title of the video, but it was when I addressed the issue that #MeToo, the false accusations, they were arriving here in Brazil because there were already women on Brazilian YouTube discussing this. Back then, I had already said the following, that, for example, yeah, if you are seeing a woman, let's say, if it's a casual relationship, but she thinks you're an awesome guy and she has expectations of dating you, if you end the casual relationship with her and don't ask her to be your girlfriend, you're going to be disappointing her. You're going to be bothering her, you know? Leaving her in an uncomfortable situation, and right there you already run the risk of facing a rape accusation, and we know there are no consequences for them when they make false accusations. In the same way, if you're dating a woman, She has expectations of moving in with you, of you proposing to her, and you don't do that. You could face an accusation during a relationship or whenever you decide to break up with her. Likewise, if you're perhaps already living with a woman, already married to her, and for example, she wants to have children, you don't want to have children, or she might keep giving you a bunch of ultimatums, wanting to control your life and the relationship, spending your money. And logically, that's only psychological violence when you commit it against her. When she commits it against you, it's not a. So, even at this stage, a serious relationship with or without children, if you don't meet her demands, you could end up with an accusation, right? Yeah, or even if you separate from her, get a divorce because you're dissatisfied, you could end up with an accusation. And you see what this range is, right? Because this whole thing about psychological violence is just one more little thing to insert into the Maria de Pena law. It's one more weapon placed in a woman's hand. I mean, you already had the hashtag Me Too weapon, the false rape accusation, which again is something that can be used to control a man and can be used to punish him if he wants to end a relationship with her. And in the same way, now there's one more weapon in a woman's hand, which would be the definition of psychological violence, which is anything that bothers the woman that she can keep using during the relationship. I mean, during the relationship, she can use the weapon of accusing you of psychological violence, and after it ends, she can still use the weapon of a rape accusation. Get it? I mean, these two definitions, both of violence and of what constitutes rape, have already been expanded so much to unrealistic levels that there's no way around it, whether inside or outside of a serious relationship, or during the relationship, or after you break up with her. Because we know that a rape accusation can be made years after the alleged rape. The guy is completely controlled. And then when we come out and say that women are amoral, that there's no way to have a relationship with them, that the more empowered they are, the worse they get, the more toxic they become, the more unviable it gets, not just a long-term relationship, but a short-term relationship with them, then they say you're being too radical, you're being too extremist.